Okay, so on the directions you can see there's all these one-to-one pieces, joystick, etc. And I use plastic to make those. So I take a piece of sprue from a plastic model, heat it up with a Bic lighter till it's nice and melty, and then you pull with some even pressure, and you already know how thin they're supposed to be. I'm trying to make these for the seat harness, or not harness, the seat aperture. And then I just start measuring and cutting directly on the plan, because those are one-to-one dimensions that we need. So I got the cross piece on there, and then I basically double my length there. And because it's so thin, I can actually bend that plastic, and it won't crack, it won't split. If it's any thicker than that, it would split. But that's my little triangular piece. You could make these out of wire, which most people would do, and that is fine. I don't know, it's easier for me to use plastic. And then you go ahead and cut these to length, and then you make the other side. And there's the other side. It actually turned a little thicker than the first side, but again, we won't tell anybody. And that's the beginnings of the seat attachment. On the apex, I give a little shot of plastic glue just to make sure, a little insurance, just to make sure it's going to hold together. It should be fine, but maybe that helps it hold together a bit more. Now we make some more parts, joystick and rudder pedals, and they need to be a little thicker. So I took another piece of plastic, heated it. This time you let it cool a bit longer. And then when you pull, you go slow, and you kind of try to get it to the diameter you think it needs to be. It doesn't have to be exact, but close. And then as you pull, you wait longer. Notice I'm waiting much longer on this one. You can get a real nice piece. Now I'm starting to make the rudder pedal bar. And I did the same thing. Cut these pieces to length, and then I cut the other ears where the that little T is, where the stirrups are going to go for the pilot's boots or shoes. So cut that to length. Again, this is much easier to do than with pliers and nippers, I think. Just nice using plastic. And then I just used that one that I just made as my master for the other side. So get that ready and cut it, and get that all ready to go. So far, it's all very easy. Now, I use fuse wire, which is real bendy wire, and I'm going to use that to make the little stirrups themselves. So I take a little piece of something appropriate diameter and roll the fuse wire around, and you get something that looks like the little stirrup. I think it's a little bit thick for scale, but again, it's going to be down in the cockpit. It'll be more than good enough. It'll look just fine. So that gives me that little piece, and I just line it up, and it's nice and even because you put it around something that's round, and you go ahead and cut just like you did the other pieces, and then you make the other one the very same way. Try not to cut your other pieces up, which I almost did there. In any event, make the other side, and then you've got the rudder bar essentially ready to go. Now what I do is I use some thick super glue, and I will glue the metal pieces right to the plastic, and you can see I put it down. It's not quite in the right place. Play with it a little bit, get it right on the end, and let it dry for a second or two. And I still messed up, had to move it out to the tip. But there you end up with a nice little facsimile of one of the rudder pedals, and you just make the other one the same way. There's both of them done, and they actually look really good. And now what we have to do is put them onto that main piece. I use a little of the zip kicker just to touch the places where I use the super glue to make sure that they're nice and solid and they dry instantaneously. That way they don't surprise you later and fall apart when you don't need them to. Now I've put the one side together, put a little dab of glue on that side, and I'm just sticking it in. Now, what I should have done is put some plastic wrap or something down before I did this, because you'll notice that now I'm stuck. But just a little judicious use of the X-Acto blade, and I pried it off no problem. But you should use a piece of plastic, because then that wouldn't happen to you. Anyway, there's our rudder bar basic setup ready to go. Now, that gets put right in that little spot on the floorboards. And notice I have it angled. I have it canted. That's because I'm going to put the rudder in such a way that I have, in this case, what's that? Left rudder when I'm done doing that. Now I went back to doing these little pieces of the seat. This was the most difficult part because it has to be even and has to hold the seat. And if it's not even, the seat's going to be crooked and you're going to be crying to your mother. To a little super glue and some of that zip kicker and put the cross piece member on one apex and make sure that it's kind of close to the right angle. And then you put the other little triangular piece on the other side. And then you put it down and check it and you're close. Now what I found was when you can see how it's supposed to fit, that actually looks pretty good. And you can see that it's supposed to fit on, there's 4 little spots on there that are on the little printed card on that thing, and it's supposed to fit like that. But I found that it was a little crooked. So what I did was pulled off one side and just added it one point at a time. So I added those 2 there, let them dry, again with a little bit of super glue. Thick super glue, or cyanacrylate, I guess it's what it's called. Let it dry. And then I came back and put the other side in and basically kind of bent things and jiggered things until I got it into the right location. A little shot of the kicker to make sure that it's on there. And now I put the other piece on. Little dabs of glue on the little vertices down there. Put them onto the paper carefully. And then lean them up against the bar. And you'll notice that there's a space there and they're not quite connected. But what you do is you sort of futz around with it and put a little glue there, using a piece of sprue as a glue device. And with a little bit of judicious poking around with your finger, you were able to get it together. And these were straight and true and turned out just fine. So there it is, ready to go. Then you put a little glue on the back of the seat and on the bottom of the seat, and you can go ahead and plop that right down onto those seat supports. It looks just like the real thing. And there it is, ready to go. Looks really good, actually. Pretty pleased with that. You know, that doesn't look much worse than any kind of plastic model you could build. You know, the paper, flatness of the paper notwithstanding, but looks great. Now, I didn't show you, but it was more of the same. The joystick is plastic with some fuse wire for the grip. And later on, we'll show you some stuff about how I gussied it up a bit. But there is the main piece. It's also crooked, leaning to the left a little bit, because I'll put a little up aileron on that side. Now, those points there under the seat are where control wires go through, and they connect from the joystick and the rudder pedals that I'm pointing to, and go up through there. So all we're going to do is fish those up in there. Now, this is the forward bulkhead with the magazine, and you can see that, look, that's where there's a little hole, which I didn't know about until I tried to fit this together. I noticed the part of that rudder bar vertical piece is too tall. Well, it's too tall because it's supposed to fit in a hole, which I had no idea. That's a really cool design. So you slide that up into the hole, and then you match up the bulkhead to the line where it's supposed to go, and that's the test fit. Looks great. So now I have a little bit of, in my case again, super glue I'm using on these because they fit well and I want them to glue in and be strong. And usually when you test fit something, it works well. And then when you do it and add glue, all hell breaks loose. In this case, it worked pretty well. Put it in the hole and then line it up along those little slots, or the little line. That's why you had to be careful to make sure all your wooden parts and the backing are the right thickness. Because then they won't line up. But there you go. There's the basic part. Now, since I got it square and good and strong, it looks okay. I went ahead and put some super glue down there as a way to buttress it and make sure it's even stronger, just to be a little bit careful. But there are the 2 pieces, and when you start matching it up into the cockpit, there's a spot there where that first bulkhead will go through, and you can see a little part where the floorboard, little white piece in there, you can see where it lines up right along that white spot, that white line. And then the part with the seat is the same thing. it'll go along that diagonal back there, right behind that fake piece of tubing. And that's the way it's going to go together. It'll look really, really good. So there they are. I'm excited to keep moving.